Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Midweek Minutes here from the office this time around. Today is Wednesday, June 10th. I know it feels like Wednesday, June 97th or something, but we are a week and a half into the month of June. We are about a week and a half or so into phase one, technically, out there in the real world. Here in Northern Virginia, of our return to some type of new normalcy. A couple of things I want to share with you. I've got some housekeeping matters as well as just a devotional thought for you to ponder and consider in these days as we see the days quickly approaching for our regathering for a time of worship. But let's take care of the first things first. The matter of housekeeping, I just want to say thank you to our church membership. And this is directed to those of you who are members of our congregation. Thank you for your very quick response to the email request that we sent out to you the end of last week. Want to let you know that we were given permission as a board of directors to renegotiate the lease agreement that we have with the Montessori School of Oakton. That is underway right now. Again, the goal is for them to arrive for the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year, the end of August, first part of September. And those details, as they are lined out, we will keep you informed on that. So thank you for your quick response. It wasn't a difficult thing, I hope, for many of you just to respond yes or no, and we appreciate you doing so in a quick and timely manner. I want to thank our deacons who actually made some phone calls and actually maybe filled in some gaps on some of the information that we didn't contain in the request, to hear maybe your questions or concerns about the matter. Also, to pass on to us, for those who do not have an opportunity to respond electronically through email, their voices were heard as well. And so thank you, deacons, for doing that. Yesterday, we sent out to you, actually on Monday, I take that back, it was Monday afternoon, probably got into the mail process yesterday, a paper copy, good old-fashioned hard copy of our church budget that is being proposed, which will come into effect on July 1st. Our fiscal year runs from July 1 of the current year until June 30th of the following. So our current operating budget is quickly drawing to a close. I shared with you weeks ago that we would not be able, most likely, and it is borne out to be the truth, that we're not going to be able to meet in time for us to have our regular annual business meeting where we propose before you our church budget and our leadership teams and our leadership roster. It has been our custom in these past recent years to share with you about 2 weeks prior the proposed budget in detail. This coming Sunday, the 14th, would be that milestone. On Sunday, you would have received a hard copy of the budget that's being proposed, as well as a cover letter that kind of introduced it a little bit, maybe highlighted a few changes and so forth. Since we can't be together, that information was mailed to our church membership. Now, for those of you who aren't actually members of our church and may be watching and even have a concern and skin in the game, as they say, I'm going to come back to you in just a moment. But we sent out the hard copy, and you will get actually like 4 or 5 pages. If you haven't gotten in the mail yet, check your mail. If you don't get one and you are a member of our church and you don't get one by the next 2 or 3 days, end of the week, certainly, please let us know. Just send us an email and we could certainly resend it or send you a digital copy if you'd like to get one that way. But for those of you who are members, you should have received in the mail or should in the next day or so, a packet that contains the cover letter, which explains a little bit of how this is broken down. And then you'll find a stapled copy of our church budget for you, just like we would hand out to you. We did that just for our church membership because we have to create a specific roster of those who receive the electronic and or the paper ballots. We are making electronic ballots available to all, but there are some with whom that's not going to work, and so we're going to provide for them a paper ballot. Obviously, if you're watching this, you'll get the electronic one. We're going to provide resources to help you navigate that, but if you responded yes or no to the request that came out the other day, it'll be that simple of a process. But we want to still give you 2 weeks to look at that information. We send it out to our church membership because those are the ones under the incorporated status that we are as a nonprofit corporation here in Virginia. Our voting members had to receive the information. This is kind of an emergency status business decision. The information in kind. They all had to receive it the same way and get an opportunity to cast a ballot the same way. And because we are an incorporated entity, we really have to keep very tight record on this kind of situation of who is casting the ballot. And so it is gone out just to our membership. Now, for those of you who are not members, let me address you. There's a number of you who are watching this. If you were here on Sunday and we were doing this like normal, you'd get a copy. And I want to say this, just from my heart to yours. For those of you who are not members but are so faithful and consistent in being a part of our church family and worship, some of you get out here and you roll up your sleeves, you work. Some of you, you're faithful in Bible study. And I do not know what you give, but I do know that there are a number of people who are not a part of our church family officially in full membership who consistently give. And the income represented, or the receipts and giving represented on that portion of the budget, we know that comes from you. And I think it's fair for you to have that information. So if you would like that information and you did not receive one because of your membership status, we can do the same for you. We can drop one in the mail for you. We can send you an email digital version. That's the quickest way to get it, just a quick turnaround. Or you can come by just like we normally would back in the olden days before all this COVID stuff. We have copies available for you in the office and in our regular office hours, which temporarily remain Monday through Thursday, 9 to noon. That's available on the credenza, and you can come pick that up and have that. And you too could ask a question if you would like, because I know that you're a part of the faithful stewardship of our church family. So we want to make that available to you. It is not a slight to you in any way, but we just needed to keep the columns and the mail out separate to make sure, just for our clerk to have ease of making sure the ballots and the voting was tabulated all correctly according to who we are as an incorporated entity. Which brings me to another thought, just a little side note. I know some of you that are in that category that I just addressed. If things were not as they were, you probably would have already transferred your membership. We would have presented you on a Sunday, and we've not been able to do that. We even have perhaps some pending baptisms and things like that we've not really been able to do because we can't operate as we normally have. I hear you. I want you to have this information, and I hope that maybe this is just another way to say, hey, yeah, no, I need to go ahead and settle that. I want to be as fully engaged as I can, and we invite those of you, particularly those of you who might be new in worshiping with us over the last months or the last year or so. Now's a good example of just how much more you can contribute by being a full member of our congregation. And we'd love to talk with you about how we can do that, and particularly how we can do that in days like this. So please reach out to us. And if we have been engaged, and I know some of you, we've already been engaged in that kind of conversation, we're going to bring that to fruition, and thank you for your patience. But once again, we want to get you that information. It is fair and public information for that matter. Just let us know that you want it, and we'll get that out to you. Now, back to the church membership. Know that in a couple of weeks, you'll be receiving information of how to click yes or no, approve or disapprove of the budget. And another decision, a separate thing that you'll have to do, will be our leadership roster. As far as that information for the leadership is concerned, because it's a little bit easier to read than, say, the budget spreadsheet, whether you print it out or look at it online. We're going to send that to you digitally. We're not going to do a hard copy in the mail. Those will be made available, again, even to those not members. But again, to our membership, if you received this in the mail or budget just in the last day or so, you're going to get a chance to receive digitally. For those who can't, who don't have email, we do have a few that fit that category. We'll be getting that to them in plenty of time so that in a paper ballot way, they can also make that decision. So know that that's coming, and we will have our emergency standard business session as best we can on Sunday the 28th. The way it's going to play out, we will have a pre-recorded, just like this, a pre-recorded session where we answer for you the questions that you might send back to us. In that letter that you have received or will receive for our church members, you have a contact email, or you've been given instructions to drop that to the church office, just like we've done over the last few years. If you have a question, maybe it's something real small, you think, I just need a point of clarity, but perhaps if you need that, maybe others need it as well. So please email that, give us a phone call, let us know what the question or concern is, and we will, via a pre-recorded session, there'll be, look like the Brady Bunch kind of thing. If you've ever been on a Zoom call or conference, there'll be several of us there answering those questions and making that presentation. And just like this recent decision that we sent out, you'll have 48 hours or so to approve or disapprove, as the case may be. That's about the best we can do under these circumstances, other than really violating what we think is best, and that is asking for some of you, particularly who might be in a high-risk category, to come and be engaged. We need you to be engaged, and we need to keep it the same for everybody according to our Constitution. So even if we do have some things that are happening in the facility between now and then, this is the best way to do our business meeting and keep it all above board and keep it all as equal as we can. Again, for those of you not members, we will send you that information too. I think it's fair for you to hear some of those questions and concerns, particularly if you're looking at planting some roots in our church fellowship. We'd love, again, to talk to you about that. Well, let me get to the process where we are as far as returning. I've used the rule of thumb just throughout this entire discussion, from the very moment we had to say, hey, we can't even be here for Easter months ago, that we would probably use, at least for me, a rule of thumb like the second Sunday of phase 2. And so it takes a little bit of the pressure off of us to make that decision, but we're not, wed to that. It could be longer if we felt best. It could be sooner if we felt best, or we were ready to do so. We are in the process of getting ready. It looks to be about that, and looking with where we are in Northern Virginia, here still in phase 1. It could literally happen in the next couple of weeks, looking the first part of July, perhaps. And I want to send out to you some information as it's complete, but I'll give you a little heads up. We are in the process, step by step, providing resources, making sure we have the supplies we need to make sure that it is a clean environment. We have had several visits, both from our own church family and others, looking at our layout. We've had the engineers and the thinkers, the facility folks that we depend on within our church fellowship to help us see a professional eye and to look through this, to come up with a way that gets people in and out, allows people to worship in a way that is both joyful and hopefully as safe as can be. We don't want to rush into anything, but we're not going to drag our feet either. We're going to take small steps, and we're going to move very deliberately, and we're doing that now. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll be receiving that information, both in print and a video. I'm going to walk you through what to expect the first time that we're back. And then we are going to be moving, in addition to that, in the next couple of weeks, back to a live streaming situation. In case you haven't noticed, what we've done for our worship on Sunday mornings has been a pre-record. When we were kind of in a period of quarantine for a few weeks, I'd done quite a few days in advance. We're back to doing those on Thursday or Friday at this point. As we started last week doing that, our scripture reading and the music that we have is all pre-recorded, and we're not together. We're putting that together for a time of worship and an opportunity that gets them posted on Sunday morning. In order to get back, like to any kind of normal, we have learned that we want to continue streaming. We're going to need to do so for two reasons. One, a lot of you don't need to come back right away. There are going to be a number of you, and I've already talked to some of you. We understand there's no judgment involved in that at all. You're going to feel safer at home, and that's where you need to be. We don't want you to miss worship. There are going to be opportunities, and we are now moving into a very close, much sooner than later kind of scenario where we are going to be able to have people in worship. And we want to combine the two. We have just recently purchased some new equipment. We're getting our feet under us on that. And so a few weeks prior to actually saying, okay, let's begin the process of regathering, we're going to come back with our worship team on the platform, socially distanced, all the things we were being careful with before we started doing the pre-recording, and go back to the live stream. That's going to make some changes in the way we have to post, but we hope that that's not going to create too much inconvenience. Once for a week or two, we get that under our feet, we know what we're doing with that, get a little bit better with this new equipment, we're then going to be able to focus on letting you come back to the building and regather, again, with some of the limitations. So just keep that in mind. Those days are coming. But again, and I've already talked to some of you, I know that it's best for you not to even consider. You're thinking, I won't see you for quite some time, if at all. We understand. And one of the things we want to do is to try to minister to you in this unique time, in this unique way. So we're going to make sure that our streaming, we continue to up our game, so to speak, in that, both with our technology and just our skill with that. So we thank you for your patience, and we ask you to continue to pray for us, and that God gives us wisdom, not only in the technique, but also to make sure that we just don't minister to those few that might be here socially distanced around the pews, but that we have truly a way to be a functioning congregation that's healthy in the decision processes, for example, like we're having to do, and pastorally. And what appeared to be something that would just be a few days, a few weeks, has now turned into months. And even though we come back to a new normal, there are questions for us. How do we best minister to perhaps the most vulnerable, not only in our congregation, but in our community? Along that line, I want to ask you to consider something for me. I'm going to throw out a question, and I don't want you to mishear the tone or however you would take this question. But we have been focused so much on the how and the when, maybe the when and then the how, of how we get back to regathering. Remember that, number one, we've not been closed. The facility might have been closed for a while, but the church hasn't been closed. We're still operating. We're still the congregation. We're still the people of God. We're still the church. But so how do we begin regathering? How and when? There's a question that was posed to me in a conference, and I wrote it down. I thought it's very simple, but it's one I think we need to answer because it helps us see some things, not only for dealing with these new limitations, but certainly the future. And that question is, are you ready for it? Why? Why do we come back? Now, don't misunderstand the question. The question isn't meant to be a snarky, like terrible twos. Why do I have to eat my vegetables kind of thing? It's not dragging, kicking, and screaming. But the real question is, why do we meet? We can look at the scriptures, and I've opened a passage of scripture. Just to paraphrase it for you at this point, Hebrews tells us that in our spiritual maturity, to make sure that we don't forsake the gathering or the assembling of ourselves together. So there's a scriptural mandate that we gather, but why? Why is it important that we're together? And for those who can't be, who make the choice for legitimate concern, how do we then answer the why and meet that need? If they can't, if we can't, what if we had to do something like this again in the coming weeks or months, or a second wave or something? When we answer the question why, it'll help us, I think, and help you prioritize what it is that you want to experience when we get back together. If the why simply is the surface, well, I can't wait for that big choir again. And they were just doing so good. And it was, oh my gosh, we got new members, and Dominic's over on the organ now. It's like, oh, it'll be great. And let's get that search maybe back, for the music person, and all these things that have been put on the shelf. Those are good. But that's really not going to happen right away. But that doesn't mean that we can't worship with joy. That doesn't mean that we can't use the gifts of music that we have. So answering the question of why will help us deal with the expectations. Now, for example, some of you will say, and I think it's one of the right answers of why we gather, because we love one another. We want to be in the same place. We want to worship. We want to hear from God. We want to hear the word. We want to respond to the word. We just celebrated Pentecost, and we looked at where there were thousands gathered, and we want that again, and we do. But I want you to dig deep in answering this question. Why? Why is it important? And then let's find a way to celebrate that. I think for many of you, it's going to be because I want to be with my church family. Now, we can't, at the beginning anyway, maybe do the hugs and handshakes that we normally do. But let's make sure that we stay connected. And how are we going to answer the why? Because that's one of the answers for that question for people who can't, whether the choice is made for them or in their own prudence, they wisely say, I'm in a vulnerable category. I don't need to be the first back. How can we answer that why for them? And I'm posing that question to help you dig a little bit deeper, to probe what's meaningful in worship to you and why that's meaningful. That we move away from worshiptainment. In other words, worship is entertainment. I just want to watch it. And it's been very easy, perhaps in this format, to slide into that. I want to be engaged in worship. I want to do that in the same place with those who have the Spirit indwelling them as well. I want to be a part of the church gathered. Realize that as we do, let's not forget to ask the question, why? And that'll help us better answer the how or the when, and certainly the how. What are the things that we just absolutely can't do any other way? And as we answer that question, I think we've got a perfect opportunity for situations and technology and resources like this to be able to say, okay, but how can we then do what we've been doing in this unique way? How can we continue that? To proclaim, to connect, to teach, to make disciples, to even make a stand when we see something wrong in our world. How do we use what we've been learning to use in these last weeks? And how can we better stay connected in a world because of a circumstance that keeps us apart? So in the whys and the hows, which we're working on, are the wins and the hows. Think of the why. Make certain that you're answering that question as well. We hope to see you on Sunday. Answer that question. Ponder it. It's part of my responsibility, not always to answer questions for you, but maybe, especially in a day such as this, to help us learn to ask the right ones. So let's ponder that together. Now, I would be remiss if I just let it go without saying, yes, I'm aware of all that is happening in our world and in our own community. Again, I have addressed that in part in my message on Sunday. I addressed that 2 weeks ago, not only with the message, but then, of course, the insert again that is available from 2 weeks ago as a standalone video. My Pentecost Lament is it's entitled. Um, when we have a better format, maybe we can discuss some of these things and what we see. But today was simply just touching base, covering some of those housekeeping things, and posing another question, because we do need to wrestle with that as well. Not to ignore the other. We've looked at that, as I've said, and when we get back together, perhaps there'll be better opportunity for us to join arm in arm in doing what we need to do to offer a message of healing and redemption to our community and to our world. So have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you on Sunday.